Pencil Kings, 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 Pencil Kings.
If there's something out there you want, go out and get it.
All right, this is the Pencil Kings podcast, and I'm do such a horrible job at promoting what we do at Pencil Kings. So before we get into this, I'm going to draw a line in the sand and self-promote. It's just too much free stuff going on around here. So at Pencil Kings, what we do is we take professional art instructors, or professional artists rather, and we get them to reveal their secrets or how they work, and then we host those videos inside of our private community. But the golden gem, the secret of Pencil Kings, is our community, where we have an awesome community manager and we've got dedicated subgroups of artists working together on cool things every month. And I was talking to somebody, and he described the Pencil Kings community as bubblegum, which some people may take offense to being called bubblegum, basically meaning it's all about puppy dogs and rainbows. But I love that. And that's what I really wanted to have inside of Pencil Kings, was this idea that it's a safe place where you can come and be a beginner. You can come and post up your bad drawings and still have people look at them and not judge you. That we're all just here to grow and learn and have fun together. So that's what Pencil Kings is about. I know there's a lot of other art communities out there that are, they're really serious and hard-nosed, but that's not us. We're the fun guys. So that out of the way, let's talk now to Eliot Min. Eliot's from Boston, and he warned me that he swears a lot. So we're going to be on the lookout for that. Hopefully we don't have to give our editor too much work to do with bleeping things out. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there to address the elephant in the room. So Eliot, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit, like a 1-minute overview about what your art is all about and what you're working on?
Oh man, that's a tough question just to start out with. My art, like when anyone asks like what my art is, I just tell them like, I just do like weird anime stuff, and I think that's about right. I try to do like pop surrealist kind of anime styled art. Right now I'm working at an ad agency, but my main passion right now is a fighting game that I'm working on called Cerebrawl.
Oh, I didn't see this on your DeviantArt. Is there Cerebrawl artwork on here? Now that you mention that, I feel like I can start to see the inklings of it.
Not so much. Like there's like a few things in there, but if you want to see more stuff that's involved with Cerebrawl, you should check out cerebrawl.in or check out my Tumblr, which is niwindustries.tumblr.com.
Okay, I'm just going to type this in. So if you hear me typing, too bad. NIWINDUSTR. I'm typing really loud so you can hear me on the podcast. INDUSTRIES.com. No, tumblr.com.
Yeah.
Tumblr.com. TUMBLR, because the new way to write things is without the E at the end.
That's right. Just phonetics.
The new old way.
But for clarity, like I'm from Boston. Like I lived in like New England, like Boston and Providence for like 10 years. But right now I'm in Seattle, Washington. So
okay. So you had to clean it up a little bit when you went out to the...
Oh, man.
They're not as tough on the West Coast.
Like,
they're a little bit more PC.
People here are so polite. And I got to say, coming from like a rough and tumble East Coast kind of attitude, it took a while to get used to.
Yep. I remember that feeling. When I was in Vancouver, the politeness of that place. All right. So now that I didn't know about this video game, but I'm really curious about this now. So you work at an ad agency, but then at night you're working on this, or how does that work? How are you working on this project? Tell us a little bit more about it.
So the ad agency job actually just started this week, so that's fresh and new. But working on Cerebrawl was actually, I mean, I've wanted to make a fighting game since I was like 15 years old. And I've just been kind of putting it off. I always thought like I don't have the right skills yet. I don't have like the maturity, the discipline to like actually get it done. And I've been kind of pushing it off and off. And when I moved to Seattle, it was for a job at Disney Interactive, and we were working on Facebook games at the time. And like the money was pretty good, and I'm a single guy. I don't really go out that often, so I was able to save up enough money to take a year off, and I like my goal was like I'm gonna make this fighting game. Like right when I was about to quit, I had two choices. I was either gonna go into comics and painting, or I was gonna try this fighting game. And I met my like the last month I was at Disney Interactive, a guy named Aaron Oak started working there, and he wanted me to teach him Street Fighter because when I was in Massachusetts, when I lived in New England, like I would go to tournaments and stuff like that, and I got really, really serious about like learning like the in-depth tournament mechanics of a fighting game because, you know, like I said, ever since I was 15, I wanted to do it, so I just been kind of like building up the knowledge base that I needed for all that. And
Yeah.
he wanted me to teach him how to play Street Fighter, so I started teaching him how to play Street Fighter. And then like on my last day, I still hadn't made a decision on whether I was going to go into comics and painting or making this fighting game. And, you know, him and I were talking about, like, what am I going to do after I quit? And I was like, oh, I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to concentrate on my stuff. And he was like, like, what are your options? I was like, comic books or fighting games? Like, but I don't know if I can do this fighting game thing because, I don't know, like, it's a team effort thing and it's just me. And there was, like, this awkward pause. And he was like, oh, okay. Why, do you want to help me make a fighting game? And he was like, yes. And that was it. That was like I make really big life decisions on a whim like that. And this was no exception. He said yes, and I was like, okay, we're doing the fighting game thing. And so for a year, that's all I did. I didn't have to go to work. Like I did some freelance here and there, but it was really, really light. My main thing was like trying to get this fighting game at least at a level where the momentum was not easily stopped. And that's where we are right now.
That's such an awesome story because this is what I really encourage people to do this, you know, to follow and do the thing that you want to do. But I feel like it's actually quite rare that somebody goes ahead and does it.
Well, for me,
You know?
it was inevitable because if you've seen my work, it's like I said, it's weird anime stuff. I live in America. Like, there's no, like, no matter where I go to work, I'm going to have to suppress that side of me to please the client. And I take professionalism very seriously. Like, if someone's going to give me money, I want to give them what they want. Like, I don't want to, like, bully my vision in there. Like, they have something they want. I want to know what it is, and I want to achieve what they have in their head. As much as that's an impossible task to do, it's like an ideal that I think should be strived for as a professional. But with that in mind, I mean, I was, by the time I quit, I was a professional for like 8 years or so. And I was just so hungry to show the world that, like, you know, there's something that I want to show you guys, and I need the opportunity to do it. So it was going to happen at some point or another. It just took a long time to get at a place where I could do it.
All right. So let's say somebody did you always know that you wanted to do a video game, or was it something that came as your career developed? You're like, hey, you know, one day I might like to make a video game, but now's not the time. Maybe one day. What was it like for you?
I mean, like when I was, let's see. So there's this fighting game called Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, and it's like it's the most beautiful game in the world. I still think that as far as art packages go, like it's one of the most complete, seamless, flawless packages put together. And I played that game when I was in high school, and I was like, I would love to make something like I want to make something like this. And before college, I really wanted to become an animator, but when I started college, I thought that was like kind of a pipe dream, so I kind of went into illustration and comic books. And then right when I was graduating, I almost worked at Dark Horse as an editor, but that kind of fell through. So I was kind of in panic mode. New England is one of those few places where there is a video game industry, and my friends were working in video games. So that's when I seriously thought, like, okay, I'm gonna like seriously think about going into video games. I started in QA, quality assurance, as a game tester, and then I worked my way up to get into the art department. And my career in video games kind of happened a little bit more organically. But once I got into a career of video game making, that old dream in high school where when I was playing Third Strike, of like I want to make something like this, like something this complete, something this flawless. Like it started to like bubble up again, and then it just kind of percolated for like almost 10 years, and now I'm finally at that place where I'm like, all right, I got to do this. I have to do it.
Okay, so I had a similar dream. I left the film industry and started a video game company in China. The idea was that we were going to do art outsourcing or outsourced art assets, which happens very regularly now, and then use the money to fund special projects, one of which would be our first video game. So we found a programmer, we had a concept artist, and we had like a little team to build this thing. It was a total disaster, like a SHIT show that we couldn't pull it off. We didn't really know what we were doing. It was way harder than we thought. How are you? Because you've been in the industry for a long time, so I'm sure you've seen people try and fail. Like I've seen so many people fail now that I'm really. It's not that I'm cynical. Like I want people to succeed, and I'm not saying that I'm not applying this to your project, but I've just seen so many people go down this path, and it be not a way. It's never a waste of time because you learn so much when you do this.
Oh yeah.
But what are you doing with your 10 years of experience to sort of mitigate the risks, like saving up your money to take a year off? Genius. That's what you totally should do because it takes so much time to make this thing happen. Having the clear goal that you want to bring your project to a point where the momentum is enough that it's inevitable, basically.
Yeah.
Totally smart. What else are you doing to help this along that's not necessarily like, being the best artist, which is what people often gravitate towards, but there's so many other intangible things, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to try to say this without coming off like a huge douchebag, but like the art world is within the rest of the world, and because of that, like enterprising and marketing and things like that always come into play. So a lot of times you'll see artists that aren't the greatest artists per se, but they can get their shine by being like great marketeers and great entrepreneurs. Like,
we don't have to name names. We can just leave it at that.
Sure. How do I put this? Like, let me explain it on the other side of the coin. Like, if you're the best artist, you don't have to be a great business person or a marketeer because you're so good that everyone wants your time. Whereas, like, you don't have to go look for an audience. The audience is going to come to you because you're that good. But if you're not that great, you got to go, like, plant the seeds and you got to find your audience. You got to find your market and stuff like that. And because of that, like, you don't have to be the best artist because you just need to find the people that like what you do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me try and reiterate it back, and you can, if I got it wrong, I'm sure by the time we correct that, then we'll have it correct. So if you're the best, if you're really the top of the top, which let's say there's 10 spots in each vertical of art, that might even be too much. Like there's 10 best comic book illustrators, there's 10 best concept artists, there's 10 best painters, 10 best magic card creators, or whatever it is. So if you're one of those 10 best, no problem. The world is your oyster.
Yeah.
Now, but there's only 10 spots, and there's a lot of people who aren't in that 10 who are still really, really good, but they still have to hustle.
Yeah.
However, you're also saying that you don't necessarily even need to be at that level, that uber, upper echelon, extremely skilled level, if you can find the right people who like your stuff. What I like about this vision and what you just said is that it leaves it open for anyone. If you love drawing cartoon flowers and you want to make a game about the life cycles of cartoon flowers, the expert, the academic, like the pro, the hardcore fundamental guy might look at that and be like, oh my God, I can't, no one's going to buy this thing. However, you choose to make cartoon flowers from famous video games, and so you've tapped into now a market of already hungry fans who like the art of these various video games, and you've got your cartoon flower video game with some homage to some other things. So you've got an audience built in, and all of a sudden it's not, you didn't create Mario, but you created a project that would allow you to sustain yourself and to continue to work on your own creative projects, and that's pretty darn amazing.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing is like, okay, like the best of the best, the top 10 guys, for like the layman who doesn't, you know, like do what we do like every day, and we're like, we see things that people don't see. The stuff that the top 10 guys do, the layman might not even see it. Like they might not see why this is like top 10 stuff. There's something to be said about the artists that can create something like stripped down and simple enough that the everyday person can actually appreciate it to its fullest extent.
Ooh, that's really elegantly said. Well done.
But actually, we're kind of going on we're kind of digressing. Wasn't the question something else?
That's fine. That's what the point of this podcast is, really just to understand sort of like what the world looks like from the perspective of people who have spent a long time thinking about this. So for somebody, we were talking about what the kind of like what the mental frameworks are that you could use to set yourself up for success when you want to do a bigger project on your own.
Sure.
Like a video game or whatever. So we talked about...
Oh, right. Yeah. Something I learned from working in the industry that helps me with this project.
Yeah, because I had seen a lot of people try to make games and just fail at it. And so you started to talk about how, you know, there's games are within the rest of the world, and marketing and business skills are part of the rest of the world, that I feel like there's this naive belief, and I know because I had it, if you can just make a game, that game that's in your head, it's so good that people will just have to stop and take notice, and everything will be fine.
I mean, I had that attitude too when it just came to just drawing as well. Like I thought, like in the art world amongst artists, it's really popular to kind of poo-poo the people who are like kind of self-promoters, people who can kind of like do the hustle, right? But I thought, like, for the longest time, I was like, you know what? Like, if I'm the best, you know, like, I don't have to do that. People will beg me to work with them and stuff like that. And I'm at that age, and I'm looking at the kind of art where I'm like, my biggest heroes, like the people that I look up to, and I basically want to be them. Like, even they need the hustle. Like, they don't just sit back and people are just, you know, begging to work with them. It's even the greatest of the great, they still need to work that hustle. And I think something that people should hear at a younger age is like, you know, there's nothing wrong with the hustle. You should do it. You should be confident. If you think you're good, you should be confident and just go out there and do it. But to go back on like stuff that I learned from the industry that helps me with this game is, so when you work on a big project, there's two ways: small team, big project. It always comes down to this. You can either spread your effort across a lot of things. So a fighting game can be like 30 characters, 25 backgrounds, 12 game modes, and et cetera, right? Or you could downscope. You gotta boil it down to like the purest experience of your game. So as an artist, I wasn't, especially because I've been waiting to do this for so long, I wasn't willing to water down my efforts across many things. I wanted to downscope. So our plan right now, the way that we're working right now, is we have plans to do this big scale thing. We want different game modes. We want a bunch of different characters, blah, 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 blah. But because it's such a small team, I'm thinking as small as possible. One stage, one character, just the corest of the core gameplay mechanics. And then we can take that, and then we can take it to a publisher, and then if we can convince people that this is something worth investing into, then we can start exploring other avenues of the game that we want to make with the same intensity.
I think that's an awesome, like, that's how it should be done. Or that's how, at least in my experience of things being put together, and you prove it out in stages. You're like, look, we proved that this works. Now we just want to do times it by 20, you know, 20 characters and 20 backgrounds or whatever it is, but you've proven it once. And the rookie mistake The mistake that I made, the mistake that a lot of people made, is making the whole game on the first go, not showing it to anybody, and basically never releasing anything because you couldn't finish even one level because you were working on 10 at the same time.
I think another mistake that a lot of people make with their passion projects, and I make this mistake even till today, but scale and scope is part of their vision. It's fine if scale, like a big scale and a big scope, is part of your vision. You just have to know that if you're gonna, keep going with this, scale and scope is the first thing you should cut. Like, just know what your boiled down experience is gonna be, concentrate on that, and scale and scope is a luxury.
I love that. And I think it's so applicable not just to games, but to so many different things where it's like, okay, I hear you. What you want to make is like this awesome, sprawling universe, spanning multiple universes thing. What's like the 1 minute version of it, or what's the 1 hour version of it, or the 20-minute experience, or the 5-minute experience? And can you make that, and can you make it awesome?
Because once you can make that, you can probably make the rest of it. But if you can't get to that, you're in some trouble.
Yeah. Do you think it's that we're naive, that we try to make something so big, or do you think it's based in fear that subconsciously we know that if we bite off more that we can chew, then we can chew, we'll never have to release our product?
Is it based out of fear? Like, I mean, fear is always involved, of course. But the thing is, as artists, we do want to show people what we do. But we don't want to show them until it's perfect. And that's something it's something I struggle with too. Like, I hate releasing sketches. I hate releasing like half-finished stuff. The combat designer that I'm working on has the same mentality, and it is a struggle, because especially when you're like, okay, you release something, it's not done. You tell everyone it's not done, and then you hear the feedback, and in your mind, your first thought is like, oh, I know, like, oh, that was the first thing I was gonna get to after this. Like, there's that frustration, and I think there is a part of there's a bit of ego that goes into it, right? When you hear that feedback, you're like, oh, I thought of that too. I'm not stupid, I swear, like, that kind of stuff. And like we all want to come off like we're smart and we're talented and stuff like that, and we're afraid to release the more human version of our project because, we're proud. We were proud people, I think.
So I totally hear what you're saying, and I'm wondering that more human version of the project, if we could explore what that means, and if there's a way that it could maybe help us. Like, in the last podcast, I was talking about this project that I discovered at milafilm.com, and I was really interested in how she was able to bring people together, because it's this huge project now with many people, but for a small team, or maybe it's just a project that you're working on yourself, because I know that a lot of people inside the Pencil Kings community, they're interested in coming out with their own graphic novel, which I feel is something that you could probably relate to. I'm sure you've had yearnings to come up with your own graphic novel.
Oh, yeah.
But what is the more human version of the project, and how could we use that to get strength or gain momentum? Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah. There are some artists that are just, when they come on the scene, they're the bee's knees. They're the cast me out. Like, their first effort is just mind-blowing, right? Like, there are those artists that are just,
oh yeah,
they're like prodigies. Like, you're like, oh, how are you even human? Most of us are not like that. I'm not like that either. There's going to be you're going to have to trudge through a lot of mediocre to get to there. And you're going to have to post a lot of mediocre so that when you get there, that you're not stuck in the middle of a desert. Like, you're doing this great stuff, but who cares? Because nobody sees it. In the end, I think this journey of an artist, especially in the internet age and stuff like that, is that people want to invest in like seeing you grow. right?
I like that.
Like, how do I say this? Of course, there are artists that they come on the scene and they're just godlike, and you're just like, I'm just gonna keep paying attention to this person because it affirms my higher nature of humans and stuff like that. But to an audience, that's unachievable. Like, that's a window into a different dimension that you're never gonna achieve.
Oh, okay.
Like,
I got it now. Keep going.
when you release what I say the quote unquote more human version of your projects and stuff like that, you're inviting people on for the ride. You're like, hey, I'm going to that other dimension, and I'm gonna show you every step of the way that I go, and we're gonna go with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it also allows people to take a little bit of, I don't know if ownership is the right word, but feel like they're part of the story because they were there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I knew about that artist before he got big.
Yeah,
I knew
it's
about that
like,
band before they were famous.
Yeah.
You know?
It's
That
like
whole
hearing
thing.
that indie band, and you're like, oh, check these guys out, they're amazing, and then they get big, and you're like, oh, I knew about them when they were like garage band and stuff. Yeah. It's kind of like that. Like, I think because of the internet, artists now are kind of like garage bands back in the day. Like, you can kind of go on the ride with them as they grow as an artist.
And what I love so much about this is that it shatters that myth of, I'm not good enough to post my work online.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we're saying is you're actually hurting yourself by not allowing people to see your evolution, your growth.
Yeah.
You might not want to have it in your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to prune what you put out.
Yeah.
And maybe not everything goes online, but there is something about being along for the ride, as well as you just seem more human. When you see somebody who's struggled or who has made leaps and progress, you can see their dedication.
Yeah.
You can see that they're in this for the long haul, and that means a lot.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I kind of got that impression from a much younger age, because one of the favorite things that to me with manga, or Japanese comics, is the first book that you pick up and read is not going to be the same. How do I say this? Have you ever read Berserk?
I've only seen the movie, and I discovered it recently, and it blew my mind.
It's
awesome.
It's insane, right?
Yeah.
I would challenge anyone listening to this to pick up book number 1 of Berserk and book 30 of Berserk. You won't even believe that it's the same artist, and that's part of the fun of reading a long form comic like that. For me, is like, the story, the art, great. Yeah, I love that stuff. But like, seeing the progress of the artist is another fun thing. Like, and it gets really nitty gritty to the point where you can think of like, he's learned this new penmanship technique, and it's really helping him, describe flat textured planes, whatever, right? And it's if you're into the whole making art thing, that's fun for people to see.
Definitely. All right, Eliot, we should wrap this up. Where should people go, or how can they check out your game? Because I feel like one of my missions with this podcast is how can we be better at promoting creative projects? Because I feel that as creatives, there's a stigma, and a lot of us just aren't great self-promoters. We don't want to be seen as that, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
So how can I help push that, or what can we do that would help do this? For your project, or if somebody else has a video game project, that they could take the same advice and be like, hey, I'm doing a video game project. I can take that same idea and use it to promote my idea. What's something that we as listeners could do to help push it forward?
Well, one thing is you guys can visit Cerebrawl.in. We have kind of a weird fundraising campaign right now where we didn't want to do Kickstarter. We didn't want to do crowdsourcing options, because crowdsourcing always comes with the risk on the user side of you pay and then you get nothing. We didn't want that, so what we have right now is just like a fundraising campaign, but most tier levels you'll get something back, no matter how much or little money you put in. But one cool thing is we're doing every other week. We put out a new demo of our game. So if you want to try out our game at a super early stage, it's not perfect. It's got a lot of bugs in it. We're working on it, but you can see that human stage of our game.
Very cool. And can you just spell out the URL for people so that they know exactly where to go?
Sure. It's cerebrawl.in.
Okay, cool. Because I didn't hear it correctly the first time, but now I do. It's like Cerebrawl, Brawl.
Because fighting games are mind games.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing this. I know it was sort of a very meta conversation, but I really appreciated it and learned some things along the way. So thank you for your insights, and I hope the listeners that you got something. Any last words before we wrap this up? Play my game.
Play my game, and if there's something out there you want, go out and get it.
Very cool. All right. Thank you so much, Eliot. I really appreciate it, and wish you all the best with Cerebrawl.
Thank you for everything.
Demands patience, skill, years of practice.
Ah, you talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.